What's up, you guys? Welcome to episode 370 of the Established Run NBA podcast. I'm Mike Gallagher. We are started in the second round and off to a fun game 7. Ready to talk this through. We're going to talk through the 3 series we did not talk about last week. With me to do so, Drew Dinkmeyer. Dink, how's it going?
It's going great. Yeah, fun weekend of basketball. Game one of Denver and Minnesota lived up to our expectations with the Wolves
Mm-hmm.
stealing one on the road there. I'm excited about the rest of that series and excited about the series that we have on tap. The Dallas Mavericks taking care of things. We'll face Oklahoma City. That's probably the series I'm having the most challenges figuring out and picking as we talk through that one. And then the Eastern Conference, the Knicks and Pacers, which is a fun rivalry that for many, many years has brought us very fun playoff series and those two fan bases going at each other. So I'm excited about that. And then, of course, we've got the young guns in Orlando, hashtag our Magic, not able to get it done in game 7 on the road. But we get Cleveland and Boston in what's the least exciting and inspiring round 2 series for me.
For sure. Just with the Wolves game, I wrote matchups today. Like, they didn't steal game 1, they took it. That was such an impressive game. We'll talk more about that on Thursday. So, yeah, let's hop in and stay in the West first. Dallas coming in quite hot, pretty impressive wins. They had, besides a crazy first quarter shooting thing from the Clippers, they smoked the Clippers. Never really had a chance. I still think they would have won even with Kawhi in the lineup. And then OKC, easiest steamroll of the first round. Pelicans had no chance against them. Quite obvious to me. So yeah, it's a battle of great on ball offense with Kyrie and Luka versus the battle of great on ball defense with Lou Dort, J Dub, Case and Wallace. That's a big starting point here. Who do you think is? It's tough. You always kind of weigh offense, but do you think that OKC's defenders could slow down the Dallas on ball guys enough to perhaps win this first round?
Certainly a chance. I mean, this series, I expect the series to be deep. It'll be interesting to me when I think through the series. You can look at this on both ends of the floor. I'm more confident in how OKC will be able to defend Dallas than I am in how Dallas will be able to defend OKC in terms of the options that they have at their disposal. I think the question mark ultimately is, does the difference in playoff experience between the highest level performers on these two teams end up kind of making up some of that gap in what we look at as, how stylistically they kind of fit with one another? Because Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving have a lot more playoff experience than Jalen Williams, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Chet Holmgren. And so as a result, that's like the big question mark for me is, does that playoff experience end up, making things more equivalent? And does the pick and roll game that we saw for Dallas during the course of the season, with the center position that they were able to fill with Gafford and Lively as the season wore on, does that give Oklahoma City kind of any troubles? Did that put more pressure on Chet defensively in this series than he was put in last series with Jonas Valanciunas, which was just kind of a size issue that he had to deal with? Not a lot of diversity in the skill sets there. So those are some of the question marks for me. You're the matchups guru here, so I'm interested in hearing your take on how you expect these teams to be able to defend one another and where you feel most confident in that happening.
Yeah, I think that OKC is probably better equipped to handle Dallas than any team in the league. We saw what Lou Dort did to Brandon Ingram. Certainly, nobody could slow down Luka Doncic. Luka's been fine in this matchup on the year, so I think he's going to be in a difficult spot. If Lou Dort plays that caliber of defense, I could see OKC's defense having kind of like an edge to keep Dallas in check overall. And then, yeah, like we saw Dallas, they really it's so underrated how good their transition offense was this year. Like, they were 8th on the year. I thought that was a pretty good sticking point for them when kind of things got slowed down in the first round and just tougher games down the stretch. The transition offense could carry them. So that's OKC's strength. They're awesome at taking that away. Dallas doesn't have a big impact on the boards. I think the Maxi Kleber injury, which we'll get into, is important, which I guess we can get into now, spinning the other side. So, I mean, that's a big deal, man. Like, they're um, going to you want it to be one way from the wire, but it's the other way. They have to play one way now. They have to play a big man. I don't think teams want to play a big man against OKC. How big of a deal is that? I think it's a huge deal. Like, I got my
Yeah.
money in before Maxi Kleber, which we'll get to. I think that Maxi thing, like, if I'm a bookmaker and I knew Maxey was playing versus him being out now, like that's a 50-cent swing to me if I'm like setting a series line here. I think it's a pretty big deal. Do you agree?
50-cent swing is a very big deal.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
probably wouldn't market that much. I'd probably be more
yeah,
like 20 cents. But
yeah. That's probably a bit much there.
yeah,
With
even 20,
35,
even
thinking about it more. Yeah.
yeah, even 20 cents would be kind of a big deal. And I think, as you've alluded to, just taking a chess piece off the table. That's something that we've talked about a lot during the
Mhm,
course of the playoffs. Is we really want to invest in teams that have more chess pieces kind of on the table. They have more abilities to maneuver and adjust. And Dallas can still play small ball stuff with PJ Washington at the five. It's
mhm,
just a little bit more uncomfortable than what they've done in the past because Derek Jones Jr. The shooting has been really really inconsistent from him and from PJ during the course of the year, and with Maxi the shooting's a little bit more stable. So I don't think they're fully bought out from having to play completely big the whole time. I still think they have lineup combinations that they can get into there, especially if they're more comfortable playing Dante Exum this series a little bit more as a big wing. I think there's more pass there, but anytime you pull a chess piece off the board, even if it's a pawn, which I would argue Max Kleber more of a pawn than a rook or a bishop or a knight. It's taking a chess piece off the board versus your opponent. So I definitely think it's a meaningful injury.
mhm,
That a lot of the little nuances and edges here. That injury, Luka Doncic's health, which was a little bit of a question
mhm,
mark during the course of that Clipper series, as I alluded to with Jamal Murray. No, I don't. I think Jamal Murray's calf issue is a bigger issue than what Luca is dealing with currently. But anytime you get these star players that have to use a bunch of possessions and have to be, very physical in the test that's being put in front of them, I worry when they start going into series a little dinged up in terms of how it's going to impact over the course of the series if that's going to be an issue. So you've got that as a little factor on Luca's side compared to Shea and J Dub and Chet, who are fully healthy. You've got the home court advantage for Oklahoma City as well on their side. So a lot of these little factors kind of add up in the way of OKC. In terms of the bench between these two teams, I think they're very, very similar in the context of they're kind of they're not strong benches for a historical NBA title contender. Like
mhm,
historical NBA title contenders, usually you have like a sixth man that is clearly a starter on like every other team in the league. I don't think we really
mhm,
have that from OKC or Dallas, but they have rotation pieces kind of, like matchup driven pieces, kind of like a left-handed reliever specialist or a ground ball specialist if you're running a bullpen in MLB. Both teams kind of have that in terms of what they can throw out there at you. I think OKC's pieces are a little bit more diverse than Dallas's pieces, and they have a little bit
mhm.
more depth there, especially if Kleber is out. But I think in terms of benches, I don't have much of an edge between the two teams this series. Do you view
Mhm.
either one of the benches as superior to the other in this matchup?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think Kaysen's pretty valuable. I think Isaiah Joe's going to hit some big shots as well. So I would probably rank OKC's bench just a little bit better. And they go a little bit deeper, 9, 10, 11 than Dallas does. I think, like, once you get past Josh Green, Dante Exum, it's, like, pretty much a cliff where I think, there you could consider. We saw, opening the first round, they were playing 11. So I think OKC just has a little bit better depth in how they want to manage it. But yeah, and then I mean, OKC starting five is so good to me. I think Chet Holmgren's defensive impact in the series is going to be pretty big. His offensive impact should be pretty big too against those, drop heavier bigs. We saw what he did to Joe Val for stretches of the first round. So yeah, a little bit depth advantage to me on OKC. Should note Luka did pretty well in this season series. Just over 2 games, he scored 34 per. Kyrie scored 31 per in these two. So but yeah, yeah, we kind of moved through pretty quick here. Any predictions you want to make from this one, and any bets you
I
have?
told you were ready to bet this at open. So
Yep.
you were very comfortable with your analysis and ready to bet this at open. I was not, and so I did not bet this at open. I do not believe that I'm going to bet this series. In the first round, I bet every series but Cleveland, Orlando.
Mhm.
We're perfect so far, 8-0 in my series predictions in round one. So feeling good about that, 7-0 on the betting side of things. This matchup, I don't believe I'm going to bet, but I've gotten more comfortable in my analysis, kind of going through. And it's just a lot of small edges that lean towards OKC for me. I think the question mark
Hmm.
is ultimately if the greatness of Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, which Kyrie was spectacular in that first round series. I mean, everything that you could have ever asked for from Kyrie from an offensive perspective was on display. And I think a lot of us have, in some ways gotten spoiled with the offensive talent that he's been able to display at the playoff level for much of his career. But the defense, he was competing really, really hard on the defensive end, adding ball pressure, racking up steals and blocks, staying in front of people. And he's not, he's undersized in terms of for elite players because he's a guard, but he's got good length to him and he's got very quick hands. So when he is active defensively, it really registers. And I thought that was a big part for Kyrie. So can that excellence from Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving elevate Dallas to this win? And I think they're very, very live, and I think the lines are pretty fair right now. I'm looking on FanDuel, and I've got OKC minus 120, Dallas minus 102. That feels about right to me. It doesn't
Hmm.
feel like there's a big difference in these two teams, but my official prediction will be OKC in 7.
Hmm. Yeah, I jumped in. I was waiting for this one. I like how OKC matches up. Of the three series we're going to talk about, this is probably my smallest position. Not that confident because Dallas was so impressive, but I did jump in at OKC minus 106, so I got a pretty good line. And then also took OKC a series parlay. They have to win the first game and win the series at plus 145. So need
I
a
like
need a
that.
big game one. Yeah, need a big game one from OKC. So I feel pretty good there. Okay, so let's go to the Eastern Conference and talk about the Indiana Pacers and New York Knicks. That game is today. We're recording this Monday morning. Yeah. Overall, pretty tightly contested series. Pacers won the season series, but just a lot of players not playing. Like OG missed the 3 games. Like it's pretty much so the season stats out here. But the big question is, can Tyrese Halliburton get going? Did that time off help him? If Tyrese Halliburton looks the way he did for stretches of this series against the Bucks, they're in trouble. And I think this is probably my biggest position on how I feel. I feel the Knicks are in a pretty good spot to kind of jump off here. But yeah, what are you looking at for the Knicks to have some advantages in this one?
This is by far my biggest position of round two, and this is my biggest position of the playoffs so far on this
Hmm.
series. So I've leveled this up and laddered it a bunch, and have a
Hmm.
number of units on the Knicks side of things here. And you alluded to things I mentioned. I get a little bit nervous when star players who are asked to carry so much responsibility during the course of the playoffs start getting dinged up. And Halliburton with this back spasms issue, he's listed questionable again for game one tonight. He's obviously playing through it and he's playing fine, but he hasn't played great since before the hamstring injury. And he hasn't played great with Pascal Siakam at a consistent extended level. And I think the Knicks match up really well defensively in terms of OG Anunoby on Pascal Siakam. Those two, obviously know each other really well from playing many years
Hmm.
together in Toronto. I'm excited to watch that matchup individually one on one. But I think that's a good spot for the Knicks to be able to deploy OG Anunoby, and then they've got Dante DiVincenzo and Deuce McBride as options to be able to defend Tyrese Halliburton. There's plenty of spots defensively that you can kind of rest Jalen Brunson, which is really nice for the Knicks because they're asking him to cover so much offensively. And then the Knicks, they do lose Bojan Bogdanovic. The series, I do think, will test their depth a little bit more simply because it's going to be played at a faster pace. The Pacers weren't great at playing at their full speed against the Knicks during the course of the regular season, but as you mentioned, those matchups were a while ago, can largely be thrown out the window. I
Hmm.
think that I think everything that went well for everything that could have gone well for Indiana went well in the first series in terms of their matchup. Dame gets hurt. He misses 2 games. He's not fully healthy in game 6. Giannis misses all 6 games. Chris
Hmm.
Middleton's battling his butt off out there and doing a really, really good job. The second most effective player for the Bucks can be neutralized entirely by speed. And that's the one thing Indiana has at their strength and their disposal. So it
Hmm.
felt to me like Indy just took 6 games to get past a very, very watered down round one opponent. A round one opponent that in the past we would have been talking about as like a play in type level team in terms of what Milwaukee had at their disposal in that series. And then on top of that, I thought it was a perfect matchup for Indiana in terms of playing an older veteran team that played slow and had struggled in transition. Indiana, like that's right up their alley. So I think they go from playing probably the best matchup that they could have possibly gotten to
Hmm.
maybe one of the more challenging matchups that they can get to, because the Knicks will work to slow you down. They will work to grind you out. I alluded in the course of the first round how I have so many concerns about how Indiana can score in the half court. And in the future, I think
Hmm.
that's something that they really need to be able to address to take it to the next level in terms of being, you know, getting into that next tier, which I think they're still a tier behind the tier before title contender. I think they're like the third tier down in terms of where they are as a
Hmm.
team right now. I think the Knicks are more in that second tier in terms of like a title contender, where they're probably not a title contender this year, but you can see like another addition being right there. And so I just think Indiana is one of the weaker second round teams we've had in
Hmm.
a long time. And a lot of the stuff that they rely on, I think New York can reliably shut down that water. So you're gonna, for Indiana's perspective, they're gonna have to shoot the ball really well from three. They're gonna need a really good series from Neesmith and Nembhard, and those guys really shooting from three. Um, It'll be in Miles Turner will need to be able to stretch out the defense there. That is one area that they could potentially take advantage of the Knicks, is the Knicks centers don't like to get out a bunch. But I think that'll just ultimately mean this is a better series for Precious Achua than it is for Mitch
Hmm.
Robinson. But ultimately, I think the Knicks have plenty of answers here, and I think they match up really, really well with Indiana in terms of the ways that Indiana wins this series, short of catastrophic injury type situations benefiting them once again. I think ultimately they just have to shoot the lights out from three, and they got to win the 3 point variance by a big, big margin. Because ultimately, half court, I'm expecting the Knicks to be able to out execute them pretty consistently in the half court.
Hmm. Yeah, a lot of the Knicks' strengths are where the Pacers' weaknesses are, and a lot of the Pacers' weak strengths are where the Knicks' strengths are. So it's just it sets up poorly. So like the biggest strengths for the Knicks we saw in the last round was offensive rebounding, right? Like they were killing the Sixers on the boards. The Pacers are 26th in defensive rebound rate. That's going to really hurt them. And then Jalen Brunson, pick and roll darling. The Pacers are dead last in pick and roll defense. They get killed on pick and roll handlers. So I think those two strengths for the Knicks are like going to swing this thing. And then on the other side, Pacers, they need rim offense. They're first in rim offense. Knicks are, when they had Mitch Robinson, they were like top five. So like how are they going to score in the half court, as you said? Like, and then the Knicks play slow. They have the slowest offensive pace in the league. That's going to hurt the overall transition offense. The Knicks have been like kind of okay. They've been like 13th in transition points allowed. So maybe they get that going. They need to get that going though. So I think there's a lot of interest there. I don't think Andrew Nembhard could slow down Brunson. I'm curious to see if they change their stylistic approach as not helping. I think they may have to do that a little bit more
Yeah.
after watching the last 4 games of Brunson just going ham. Um, so I guess that's a good question to ask. Do you think that they kind of break their defensive principles and maybe are a little bit more willing to give up catch and shoot stuff to just make sure Brunson doesn't score 40 on them a game?
Not early in the series, but I think that will be one of the first adjustments that they have to make. And I think it does two things, right? It ratchets up the variance, which I think if you're looking at Indiana and you're trying to manage the series from a coaching perspective, I think you kind of want to ratchet up the variance because I think you're at a talent disadvantage. So you ask them to shoot more New York to shoot more 3 pointers. You ask New York to that leaves long rebounds and stuff, which obviously New York is very, very good at chasing down long rebounds, but a lot of times they're very good at chasing down long rebounds because the guys Dante DiVincenzo and Josh Hart who aren't shooting are the ones who crash so much. If you're forcing them to shoot more, maybe they're not able to crash so much. Those long rebounds then can also turn into transition for Indiana, which Indiana needs. They need transition points to be able to compete from this series. So I think that's an adjustment. I don't know that they'll start out that way, but I think that's an adjustment. I think the other adjustment that they could potentially do is you saw that at times the length of Kelly Oubre and Nicholas Batum bothered Jalen Brunson at times during that first round series, especially early in the series. So you could see the matchups flipped a little bit, right? Where maybe Neesmith gets that assignment on Jalen Brunson instead of Nembhard. I certainly think they'll start with Nembhard. They're very confident in
Yeah.
Nembhard's defensive ability. They had him on Damian Lillard, but that's another adjustment that I could see if they wanted to avoid getting away from switching their core defensive principles. But anytime you're asking another team because of your style to play completely differently than the way that they've played during the course of the regular season,
Mhm.
that's putting pressure on them. And so that's why I think the Knicks are just so well positioned here.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean they have Pascal, for instance. You said OG said, "quote I know stuff about guarding Pascal. So I think that's going to be pretty valuable, and they're going to really shut him down, man. And he's coming in pretty cold. Those first two games, he was on fire as a jump shooter, lost that. So I think keeping Pascal in check, and then Halliburton just not being healthy, and then having at least a little bit of length can slow him down. So I don't know how the Pacers could like really generate offense here in this spot when they were arguably the best matchup for them with how poor the guard defense is on the other side from the Bucks. So yeah, I think we talked about most of the guys. Any other like Knicks role players? Like Josh Hart's going to kind of like another get in where you fit in kind of situation. Tougher matchup here. I expect the Pacers to be a little bit better at keeping him in check. Are there any Knicks guys you think could be kind of X factory and pushing this to possibly a sweep or in five?
Um, I think this is going to be a more like Dante DiVincenzo plays really well in pace. Josh Hart plays
Yeah.
pretty well in pace. I think it's going to be free flowing for them. I don't think it's as great of an OG and an OB series, even though OG is fine in transition and stuff. That I don't expect the Pacers to turn the ball over a bunch, which is the way that
Um,
generally OG thrives in transition. And and they obviously don't historically have not helped off the 3 pointers and don't really allow that corner three a lot. So I don't think it's a great series for OG from a statistical standpoint. I could see a really good series for Hartenstein. I think that's one of the guys that
yeah.
I'm looking at
Yep.
here. It's obviously a very tough matchup with Joel Embiid. This is a much more comfortable matchup from a size perspective with Miles Turner. I also think that some of these smaller lineups that Indiana has tried in the second unit, which I'm interested to see if they continue to try with Obi Toppin as the backup center, they obviously were comfortable doing that against a big, slow Milwaukee team. Second unit center for New York is Mitchell Robinson, who's going to have a hard time getting up and down the floor as well. So I think they're going to start with that Obi at the center stuff, and I think that leads to maybe more elevated minutes for Isaiah Hartenstein, Precious Achua as a backup center instead of backup four. Have this series kind of play smaller on the whole, and so I'm looking at those guys, Hartenstein and Chua. I think those are they're in a much better position this series than they were last series to make big contributions. I think it's less of a series for Mitchell Robinson and OG Anunoby, who thrived last series because of
Yeah.
kind of the slower down pace.
I like Mitch's spot though. Just from this, like their second unit centers are terrible. So my great matchups for
I,
my article to
I
get
think
on.
he's getting played off the floor. I don't think he's
Really?
playing a lot
Okay.
this series. Yeah. So like if they go, so here's the thing: if Indiana goes with Jalen Smith or Isaiah Jackson, I think it's great for Mitch. If
Right.
they
That's
go
what I
with,
think they're gonna do.
I don't think they're going to. I think they're going to play small.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just don't want to give up that rebounding edge though.
they want it.
Like
They need
you're
to
really hurting yourself there.
they need to spread the floor and pace it to
Yeah.
threes. And Mitch is not going out to Obi at the 3 point line, and Mitch is not keeping up with Obi in transition. So like
Yep.
if I'm the Pacers, I'm playing this small and I'm continuing to do some of the same stuff we did against Milwaukee, knowing that Milwaukee with Brook Lopez and Bobby Portis were playing really big, but the only way to beat it was to beat them down the floor. And I think that's going to be the same approach
Mhm.
for Indiana. Try to play really fast in that second unit with McConnell and Obi Toppin and really try to take advantage. And so I think Mitch is going to get played off the floor of the series. But certainly if
Yeah.
they play Isaiah Jackson and Jalen Smith, I agree with you that it's a very good matchup for Mitch.
I mean, Carlisle just hates going small against good rebounding teams. We see it all the time. We see IJ Isaiah Jackson pop in there. So I don't know. That's what I guess our first disagreement on the show here. I think they're going to play bigger in the second unit. So I love the spot for Mitch. I love the spot for Hartenstein. Hartenstein's safe. I think Brunson smashes. Like I think Brunson is going to be the best, arguably the best player in the Eastern Conference second round. It's going to be tough to catch Ant here for the West, but yeah, I like where the Knicks are at. Talked about their strengths and all that stuff. So yeah, we can get to predictions here. Yeah, I think my biggest positions on this series, we're both obviously on the Knicks here. But yeah, what do you got for bets and series picks?
Yeah, so I laddered this up. I've got Knicks series at like minus 250 or something like that is what I took. And then I took Knicks minus 2.5, Knicks minus 1.5. I did not take Knicks sweep. I do think the Pacers win a
Yeah,
game in this series. I also wouldn't be surprised if the Pacers, like, I also think Pacers first half tonight is very interesting in this
yeah,
one because I do think there's going to be a letdown from New York in terms of like the amount that previous series just demanded of them. In this Indiana team is going to be playing kind of loose in their first road game in MSG. So I could see the Pacers coming out. I could even see the Pacers kind of stealing game one. But over the course of the series, I really think the Knicks have too many strengths here. and Jalen Brunson is too much of a mismatch for Indiana to deal with. So my official prediction will be Knicks in 5, but I would not be surprised to see
Yeah.
Indiana be surprising to the upside in game one. And if they do steal game one, I am going to be doubling and tripling down on better Knicks
Yeah.
series prices after that. I just think there's a chance at a mental letdown after that Philadelphia series that was so demanding.
Yeah, and then DiVincenzo. I just want to talk about DiVincenzo really quick. I mean, he played 48 minutes in Game 6 after he was left for dead. Pretty crazy. So yeah, I'm deep in this one. I maxed it on DK at minus 225, minus 1.5 games at minus 130, minus 132 on FanDuel. Max that. So I'm a Kia deep on Knicks stuff. Definitely need them to win here. So yeah, let's get to the other Eastern Conference series. We've got the Boston Celtics against the Cavs team, which looks terrible. It doesn't sound like Jared Allen is particularly close. Can't like lift his arm over his head. This is bad, man. You've got the most well-equipped team to slow down Donovan Mitchell, and then just they're gonna bomb threes in them. Like the rim defense from the Cavs doesn't matter. Like the Celtics are just gonna bomb threes. So I don't have much to say. This is just such a mismatch, and I thought it was mispriced. Honestly, when I saw it come out, I thought it should have been like Miami levels of domination from a line.
Yep.
But yeah, what do you got in this series?
I feel the same. I think right now it's trading at Boston minus 3,000 on the series side of things, and then the spread. If you wanted to take Boston to sweep in the series, I think it's plus 180 now. And then if you wanted to take Boston minus 2.5, it's minus
Mhm.
245, and minus 1.5 is
Yeah.
minus 590. So like really big juice out there. I think that's representative of the gap here. I agree with you that probably should have been close to Miami. Miami opened at minus 8,000. Boston opened at minus 8,000 versus Miami. I should clarify that. So it's right now it's minus 8,000 versus minus 3,000 is a big difference. It's cut in half essentially. But I'm with you. I don't see a lot of pass for Cleveland here. They're gonna have to shoot the they're just gonna have to shoot the ball incredibly well and win the 3 point variance game ultimately. Like force Boston into shooting a bunch of threes. Hope Boston doesn't shoot the ball well from three, and then you can steal games that way. But I don't see much of a path to stealing a couple of games here. The Jared Allen injury is big. We'll get into this in the offseason a little bit more, but probably my most disappointing top five most disappointing results of the last 2 years has been Evan Mobley in the playoffs, a player that like I absolutely loved coming out of college and thought this guy has the chance to be like the next great power forward of this generation as a defensive player who can switch out and do all these things. He just plays small in the playoffs, and it's now 2 years in a row. He's going to have a better matchup than he would have without Kristaps Porzingis here.
Mhm.
With dealing with Al Horford, but still, Al Horford's been bodying people in the playoffs for a long time and making
Yeah.
people play smaller than they normally are. So Donovan and Darius really got to carry things in a big way. This is a tough matchup to do so against Drew Holiday and Derek White. So yeah, this is a very big mismatch, and I did not bet it simply because I'm kind of levered up with the juice heavy on the Knicks side right now. So I just and the Celtics f around enough for me that like I don't love laying a ton of juice on them. Um, but I totally see why you would at the levels that you did.
Yeah. Yeah, I got a pretty good. Like, we could kind of jump into it. There's not much to say. I don't think that the Cavs have enough on ball defense to slow down the litany of ways that Celtics could kill them. I think Celtics can play however they want. I think they can generate enough rim pressure. I'm not worried about KP. I think they've got enough depth, and even Luke Cornett. Peyton Pritchard has been fine. Hauser, they still got a pretty solid 8 man. Whereas Karis LeVert kind of popped off a little bit in Game 7 after a nice bounce back. Like Marcus Morris is giving them minutes. Like it's tough. So I think the Jared Allen thing's big. I did jump in on this. I got a pretty good line. I got minus 2.5 games at minus 170 and maxed that.
Yeah, yeah.
So I feel pretty good about that line. Was waiting for that one. When they when
Would
the,
have
when that
loved
buzzer
would
sounded off.
would have
But
loved to have hit that. I was celebrating Greek Easter here with
yeah,
the in-laws, so was not able to hit that. But I think that's a great line and a great bet. It's minus
yeah,
245 on FanDuel now, so like wildly
yeah.
different prices.
Yeah, 245 is pretty tough to lay on a
Yeah,
team that, as you mentioned, F's around and finds out. So, Yeah, anything. I don't really have much to say. Like this is going to be
Well,
like
let's talk.
hands
Let's
down the
just.
shortest series.
Yeah, I don't think we have a lot to say on the prediction side. We can get to that in a little bit, but from a matchups
Yeah.
perspective, I expect Evan Mobley to guard Jason Tatum. Is that your
Well,
expectation as well?
if so, you think they're going to start Morris?
I think they have to.
Yeah, yeah, I think so too. So, yeah, that's
I
Tatum's
think you
pretty
got.
uninspiring in first round.
I think you got to get Mobley or Morris on Tatum. The other route is what Struce,
Yeah, not good.
and then what do you do at the two? Okoro on Jalen Brown if you're starting with the Okoro lineups. Like that just
Yeah,
feels small. It feels small and like
yeah, it's pretty gross. So I guess, yeah, I guess they would probably have to put Mobley on him, which is not great, man. The Celtics aren't going to put rim pressure on them, but I don't know. They just can't play like they can't. They're too small in the backcourt to like play switch heavy stuff. It's pretty nasty. So yeah, that, like the secondary scorers, Derek White could pop off. Hot as hell, by the way. First in half court efficiency in the first round. And I'd first and catch shoot efficiency. Derek White just went ham in the first round. He's playing awesome. So yeah, the Celtics depth is just so valuable in the series here. We'll see if they can get Chris Seth back in the next round, but their starting lineup, and then Pritchard's been playing pretty well too. So yeah, the secondary pieces are just like such an advantage here. We're talking about like Max Strus, Isaac Okoro. Those guys like can't really level you up to a situation where you could. And I mean, they couldn't score against the Magic at all. Sure, the Magic and Boston may be about in the same realm of defense, but just the offense that they're going into this one with the Celtics is just like another world for them.
the one difference I'll give for this matchup is simply free flowing. I think Boston plays more free flowing than Orlando, and that might allow the secondary players to feel more comfortable in terms of letting shots go because that Orlando Cavs series was kind of a little bit grinded down, and Okoro was passing up shots again, which you
Hmm.
cannot afford to do if you're out there in the
Yeah.
playoffs. And that's the only bright spot I could give for these secondary players for Cleveland is that maybe the game is a little bit more in transition and free flowing that allows them to pull the trigger on threes a little bit more. Um, Orlando is so good at guarding the catch and shoot stuff. So
Mhm.
maybe that opens things up a little bit more, but that's like the rosiest, most optimistic outlook for me is that opens it up a little bit more. They're a little bit free flowing from three. George Niang, Okoro, Struce get hot from three and they steal a couple of games, but I don't see any chance at them winning the series.
Yeah, I mean, like if it goes to 6, I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pick a sweep, man. Like I don't think the Cavs have it. I think that game 2 from Boston against the Heat like woke them up. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't think the Cavs could generate enough shooting. Like they just don't have enough to kind of shooter variance their way out of this thing. So I'm gonna pick a sweep. I think this is gonna be real short, so I'm gonna go Boston in 4.
Yeah, I'll go Boston in five. I'll give the Cavs a game. But if they had Chris Ups, I would not be giving that game. So
Yeah, yeah.
I think essentially it's just like, hey, Boston, they can run into these games with 3 point variance where it's not on their side in a simple game simulation, but not over the course of the series. So
Mm,
yeah, I think you got your money in very very good in this Eastern Conference. I
yeah.
think we're trending towards what could be an Eastern Conference Finals of Boston and New York, which is just fun from a
Mhm.
fans rivalry perspective. I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but these two Eastern Conference series are much, much less compelling to me than the Western Conference series, which are just absolute grinded out slugfests with these four teams that are left.
Yeah, I think 85% of my second round bets are probably more, probably almost 90 are on the Eastern Conference. I feel pretty strongly about where the Knicks and Celtics are. All right, so that's going to do it. Anything else you want to add to get us out of here?
As always, if you are interested in supporting our content, there's a couple different ways you can do so. On the free side, you can check out our YouTube channel, Established Run NBA on YouTube. A video version of this will be available on YouTube as well. So for those of you checking us out on YouTube and looking at our beautiful faces and my unusual new backdrop here at my in-laws, you can subscribe to the channel. We're trying to get to 5,000 subscribers by the end of the NBA season, so appreciate your help in doing so. If you are listening on a podcast vehicle, we would love to hear your feedback on that vehicle, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, wherever you're listening to this podcast. Leave a rating and a review. Give us feedback on how we're doing, and we'd love to help understand what better content you guys are looking for out there. So those are the two ways to help us on the free side. If you're interested in joining any of our premium content, you can check out establishedrun.com/subscribe-MBA for more details on all of our premium product offerings. The DFS shows with myself and Mike Gallagher and Sam Jafferini are going Monday through Friday, breaking down each slate, the good chalk, the bad chalk, the contrarian plays, the flag plants, of course. And of course, Mike Gallagher's matchups column is coming out every day for these playoffs during the course of the week, breaking down the matchups and giving you all the information you need to make your spread bets and your prop bets, and also set your DFS lineups. So check out all of our premium product offerings at establishedrun.com/subscribe-MBA.
It's been fun. Hopefully the second round goes as well as the first. Appreciate everyone listening. We'll catch you guys next time.